I said, I have a glass of scotch from time to time. He says, what do you drink, laddie? I said, well, my father almost always keeps doers in the house. And he looks at me and he wrinkles his face up. He says, doers. He says, that's piss, laddie. He said, if you want to drink a real Scotch whiskey, you got to try Lafroig. He had to spell it for me. And when I left work that day, I called about a half dozen different shops because, we're talking late 70s or early 80s.
Yeah.
And single malts were not a thing back then. And I finally found a place that had it, and I went there and bought a bottle, and I thought it was ridiculously expensive for the time. It's about $30.
Jesus, yeah, no.
Yeah. And but ever since I got it, that was my scotch.
I mean, it's wonderful. It's briny. I feel like I'm sitting next to the ocean with this, man. And like I said, it's very Rockwellette. And the reason why I say that is because, and it just dawned on me talking to you that it's very Rockwellette. I wanted to smoke it a few days ago. I forgot what the hell it was, but it's one of you have a white and a black one. A blend.
The Bengal slices?
Yeah, that's it. And this reminds me very much of the black Bengal slices. It's very... You got to sit down when you have a scotch like this. You got to sit down when you smoke a Bengal slice. You can't just be like taking a walk with your dog, smoking a Bengal slice. It doesn't work.
No. As I said to you before I got off the phone, I'm in the car. I'll smoke Sir Walter Raleigh because I'm not paying that much attention to the tobacco. To me, it's just something to puff, get my mind off things, give it a little nick hit, and move on.
I was going to ask you, why are you smoking Walter Raleigh with the myriad of choices? And there you go. You just answered it perfectly.
I mean, first off, it's burley, so it's got a decent amount of nicotine. It's got a mellow aroma, so I'm not stinking up the car. And it stays lit easily. So I loaded up a Stanwell 107, and I got to show you.
Is it a fishtail or a P-lib?
No, it's
the Stanwell. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. The Stanwell 107 is a thin shank, lightweight billiard. And we're working with the Norman Rockwell estate and Stanwell to do a tribute pipe. And if you ever saw Norman Rockwell's self-portrait, he's smoking a straight billiard.
Yeah.
And for the time, it was pretty typical. Not as big a billiard as we smoke today. It didn't have a thick shank like most of today's billiards. The only problem with the Stanwell 107 is it comes in a little short.
You're talking like a nose warmer?
It's like it's about 5.5 inches. And back then, you would typically get a pipe that was smaller and with thinner walls than today, but also they tended to be around 6 inches long. So I got together with the factory from Stanwell, and I said, what can we do to get this thing up to 6 inches? And they said, well, we can extend the shank. So there is the Norman Rockwell Stanwell 107.
Now, can I put this on what we're talking about right now, or is this a secret?
No, I've mentioned it to the people online, and the beauty, it comes in the black sandblast. It's got a chestnut stain, and then when they finished it with the black over the blast, they went and gave it a light buff. So on the high spots, some of the reddish color comes through. And then we went with walnut because that would have been right for the time.
I love the walnut one. And is there any bloody chance that this is going to be offered from Pipes and Cigars, right?
Yep.
Is there any chance, and you know exactly what I'm going to say, Russ?
It will arrive to you in a box marked office supplies. I'll ship it to you personally.
Okay, so why is it out right now?
Mm-mm. We won't have it for 6 months. These
Okay,
are samples.
And what's the Rockwell connection other than the pipe itself? Will you be having a tobacco jar, a humidor, or something?
Oh, we sell a whole bunch of Norman Rockwell branded items.
I'd love to get them, but guess what?
We've got tobaccos. We've got tobacco jars.
Who's the blender of these? Who's the blender of the Normans?
The tobaccos are from Sutliff. I picked the blends.
Oh, okay.
But this is, and we had them put the band on it to also be, well, for two purposes: to be correct for the times, because a lot of pipes back then were banded, but also with the thin shank, putting the band on gives a little extra strength so you don't crack the shank. And so this thing comes in at 0.9 ounces.
That doesn't weigh anything. You could put it in your mouth all day.
It is a perfect clencher pipe.
What's the chamber depth?
I want to say right about 1.5 inches.
And with the diameter?
It's slightly under 3/4.
So we're looking at
it's not 5/8, so it's more like 11/32.
So it's a medium pipe.
It's, in terms of chamber, it's about average.
Okay.
But in terms of weight and length, a little unusual. But
okay.
I mean, it really does look like the pipe that you see.
Yes, and in his
self-portrait.
Yeah.
And so that's why we pulled that off. So we now, what we have to do, you can't see it, but his signature, not what he painted on his paintings, but his actual signature, is on the shank. So it'll say Norman Rockwell on the shank, and it'll have the S crown for Stanwell stamped on the stem.
Hey, Russ, how are you?
I'm doing just fine, Dan. What's going on?
Well, today I thought let's do a 5 blend thing, and I wanted to do bulk tobaccos, and I wanted to do some that I hope they're familiar with you. I wanted to go into Peter Stokkeby and Newminster. You okay with that?
Yep.
All right. So, by the way, Happy New Year.
Yes, same to you.
So, okay, let's go right into it. The Peter Stokkeby. We're going to start with 3 of Peter Stokkeby's.
Yep.
The Peter Stokkeby 400 luxury navy flake. So this is a flake, right? It's a proper flake.
Yes, it's a proper flake. It is relatively modest in its perique content.
I was going to say.
It's definitely, if you're getting into Virginia perique blends, it's a good choice.
Very good.
Because if I had to guess off the top of my head, I would say it's only got maybe 5 to 8% perique.
Okay. And what's a substantial? What's a strong vapor? What would it be?
Starting at 10%, it becomes really noticeable.
Okay. And what's
At 5 to 8%, it's sort of like black pepper when you're making soup.
mm-hmm.
You don't need a whole lot for it to be noticeable. Um, but if you go a little too far, then you're limiting who's going to enjoy it. Now with my French Canadian family background,
Mm.
when I make split pea soup, you better like pepper.
You gotta put the pepper in,
Yeah, I mean,
and
and I use Telecherry black peppercorns,
yes, yes, yes,
which are fruitier,
yeah.
and I use a significant amount, and I tend to coarse grind it. And when I make my split pea soup, you better like pepper.
Do you put any in your split pea soup? Do you put any pork hocks in it?
Of course,
Okay, sorry. I just want to make sure.
of course. No, and I also dice up some ham to put in there too.
Yeah, we're coming upon that season
Yeah,
in 2 months here.
yeah,
You should come down. You should come down to Montreal and do the maple syrup stuff.
yeah. I actually, when I make my split pea soup, uh, when it's first finished, it's one thing. But when I take the leftovers and put them in containers in the fridge, you could stand a pitchfork up in it.
The flavors marry even more. And yep,
Oh
I
yeah.
know exactly what you're saying.
Yep. Yep.
Hungry now. Um, Going back to this luxury navy flake. Okay,
Mhm.
navy. What's navy about it?
A very mild top note of rum.
Is that what I get from that? Is that the top note that I get, or is
Yeah.
there an added top note?
No, I think the primary top note is just rum. They might use a little vanilla. Vanilla is in mostly anything with a top note, but
That, that's it. Yeah.
rum for sure. I mean, to me, the two components that have to be in a Navy flake are Virginias and rum.
Now, are there any? Are there any? Is anybody ever making a navy flake without rum, or no?
It's possible, but to me, I wouldn't call it a Navy flake unless it has a rum
It's
top.
rum. And
Yeah,
who is this guy, Peter Stokkeby?
Peter Stokkeby was part of a family that's been around for God 125 years in the tobacco business. Um, and Peter was the one who brought the Danish style tobaccos really to the U.S. market, along with McBaron. But McBaron was all tins, and Stokkeby was the first one to bring Danish aromatics into the U.S. market, and I assume the Canadian market um, back in the '60s. And so you walked into brick and mortars from the 1960s on, and there were almost certainly some Peter Stokkeby tobaccos on the bar. Um, Peter had a huge personality. He was very gregarious, the kind of person who lit up a room when he walked into it. And unfortunately, he has passed. But his son Eric is in the business. He has the fourth generation tobaccos and pipes. That's Eric. And then his grandson, Eric's son, um, is a brand ambassador for Lane Limited. And Lane Limited is the U.S. importer for Peter Stokkeby. So it's kind of keeping it in the family.
That's a great job. Do you think there's a job available like that for me?
Oh, sure. I mean, we need people to take the boxes shut before they get shipped out.
Yeah, I'm sorry I asked. And Peter Stokkeby is the blender of this luxury Navy flake.
Um, I don't know if I can say that because the luxury Navy Flake came out later, and I don't know if he had passed it at that point or not.
Okay.
But certainly he was, mostly all the aromatics in the Stokkeby line are ones that he created. And
You wouldn't consider
I met him back in the '70s, and he was just a wonderful guy.
you wouldn't consider this a sort of an aromatic because of the rum
No,
and okay,
no,
okay.
no. The rum topping is you really don't notice it in the aroma, and you only faintly notice it in the flavor.
And it's very mild. And like you said, this would be a great vapor for a newbie.
Yeah, the only thing is that because it's majority bright Virginia, it's got to be somebody who's at least learned to keep their cadence slow. Otherwise, you'll probably fry your tongue with it.
They're gonna learn.
But being a flake, you can adjust that by folding and stuffing to slow the burn down.
You're
Or
talking about the smoker being a flake or the tobacco being a flake?
yes,
Okay.
yes,
Now, I'm glad you said that. Folding it. Um, Obviously, everybody has a preference, and I did that. I started folding it when I heard you could fold flakes, this and that. Yes, they do burn longer, but it's funny. I want to rub out my flakes because I want more air to go through my tobacco. I just enjoy that more.
Well, the key issue with folding and stuffing versus rubbing a tobacco out, the flavors are more fully developed when you rub the tobacco out.
Mm,
That's a combination of oxygen exposure and also and it has to do with the airflow. But if you like the taste of Virginias or Virginia Periques, but they tend to smoke too hot for you, folding and stuffing is a really smart alternative.
well, look at that. Look at that. Okay, let's move on to the next one. The luxury twist flake number 402. Is this the same tobacco processed differently?
No,
Okay, go
no,
ahead, man. What do we got here?
there's no Perique at all in Luxury Twist,
No
and it's
Perique at all.
no Perique.
So what do we got as a blend?
It's Virginia.
Straight Virginia, eh?
Yeah, straight Virginia. Um, it has a mildly sweet top note. They deny it, but I swear to
No.
God, there's coconut in there.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you said that. That's the flavor. Yes, sir.
And it's unique in the way it's made. What they do is they make a roll of Virginia, similar to the way the luxury bullseye flake is made. But while it's still moist and just freshly rolled, they stack two of the rolls on each other inside a mold and they press them together. So you wind up with these rectangular flakes, but it's actually two pieces stuck together. So you can break them into square flakes.
That's pretty
And
cool. I enjoy that smoke.
it's a nice, pleasant, mellow Virginia. If you're a Virginia smoker and you tend to puff on your pipe all day long, it's a real nice option.
So it's not very much bite, right?
Um, See, that's another thing about pipe smoking is terminology. Bite is really not generally an issue with Virginia tobaccos, and some people say, "What are you talking about?"
I was just about, yeah.
They wreck my tongue. That's not bite.
I know what you're gonna say.
That's leather tongue.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
it's just heat issues.
It's
and
steam, right?
and also that sting can come from acidity too, because Virginias tend to be slightly acidic.
Oh, okay.
So what you're experiencing with a Virginia, if it's bothering your tongue, is not tongue bite. You're experiencing heat issues. When we talk about bite, that's a chemical reaction generally to the opposite. It's more produced by alkaline smoke. So you're more likely to get it from a burley blend. And what it is the alkalinity actually causes something along the lines of a cramp in your tongue. And
A cramp.
that's true tongue bite. Tongue bite has a totally different feeling. There's one tobacco on the market, still made, that I smoked when I first started smoking a pipe, and it bit like a rabid skunk. I mean, it made my tongue feel like it wanted to curl up. It was that bad. And it's been 40 plus years since I smoked that tobacco, and I haven't smoked it since.
You know, my ex-mother-in-law was a rabid skunk, but anyways.
I hope you had her put down.
She went down by herself. But let's not talk about that, please.
Okay.
Now, the third one is the luxury bullseye flake. Now, obviously, I know why they call it bullseye. First of all, whose invention was this to begin with?
You mean the
creator of the
roll
creator of the
cuts?
bullseye?
That could have been Peter or whoever took over his duties as a blender after. But that type of tobacco has been around in various forms since probably the 1700s.
Really?
Yeah, well, one of the oldest forms of smoking tobacco is ropes.
Right.
They would take the tobacco, soak it in rum as a preservative, and then they would nail one leaf to the mast of a ship, and they would twist it, and then they would add in more leaves and keep twisting it into a long rope, and then they'd coil it up and put it in a cask for the ocean voyages, because they were still on wooden ships. They weren't allowed to smoke on board, but what they could do is take the ropes and cut a thick coin off, pop it in their mouth, and chew it.
But what I meant to say is that who thought about putting the sweet Cavendish interior? And how do you do that?
That could have been an elf, for all I know.
An elf.
Yeah. When we're talking about the black Cavendish core, you got to remember how the terminology is used. In Europe, black Cavendish is generally made of Virginia. And so what they do is they heat treat the Virginia until it darkens. Now, it will darken up naturally because Virginia has a fairly high sugar content, and the sugars caramelize when they're exposed to heat. In the US, what we call black Cavendish is actually what the Europeans call brown Cavendish. And what they do is they take burley and they treat it with some kind of sugar water. And then it's toasted. And the sugars in the sugar water caramelize on the surface of the tobacco.
Okay.
So their black Cavendish and US black Cavendish are two different things. It has a core of their black Cavendish. I'm sure that, and as far as the reasoning behind it, it's all advertising and marketing. It wouldn't smoke any different if they blended the tobaccos together before rolling it, but it just looks cool.
Yeah. How do you get that? How do you get that perfect center if it's a twist?
You gotta roll the Black Cavendish first, and then you put the tobaccos in the mold, the larger mold, and you put that rod in the center, and you roll the Virginias and Perique around it.
So it's a more lengthy process. It's
Yeah,
much more expensive in terms of time.
yeah, well, not as much as you might think. The hand cigarette rollers, the ones that have two rollers and a plastic thing and has a belt around it, and you put
Yes,
the
yes,
tobacco
yes,
in and
yes.
feed a cigarette paper into it,
Right.
and it rolls the cigarette for you. That the machine that makes these is just a giant version of that.
I see. Okay.
You put the tobacco in, you put the belts together, you put pressure on it, it rolls it, out pops the rod. And then for the second, they take the smaller one, put it in with the tobacco in the bigger one, and they
Roll
roll
it.
it again. And so now you've got this dark core with the lighter exterior.
That would be
Um,
so cool to have videos on stuff like that, man.
yeah, it would be. I think some of it is the processes are proprietary,
I
so
see.
they don't want to make it too obvious. But God, the pipe market today is not huge. I don't think there are that many people who are going to try to copy their
Wow.
process. But
So what do we got in this? We have a what kind of what blend is it? It's a vapor,
Virginia,
no?
well,
It's a vapor.
it's a
Bullseye.
Virginia Perique blend with Black Cavendish.
Okay. Um, I find that one, and I'm probably going to use the term wrong again. Um, is much more peppery
Um, yeah, I can see that, and
and
that
prone to leather tongue.
it definitely can do that because that Black Cavendish is made of Virginia, and that's also part of the reason for the pepperiness. Is some Virginias do have a peppery character, and
Ah,
after
okay,
being heat treated, it would come out even more.
okay, okay.
So So yeah, I find it a bit peppery. It certainly got more of a mellow sweetness than the luxury Navy flake,
Yeah.
um, and it's a relatively slow burning tobacco, and it's pleasant.
And
So
would you fold this tobacco or would you rub it out?
I've done both. That's one because of the types of Virginias that are in and everything else. That's one that I may fold and stuff
Hmm.
just to keep it from burning too hot.
So then folding and stuffing this luxury bullseye flake, once you get to the Cavendish, you get a shot of sweetness.
Yeah, yeah. But again, that depends on how you fold it. Um, if you fold it in quarters, which is what most people would do, um, and then you stuff it in your pipe. Yeah, when you hit the Black Cavendish, you'll get a burst of sweetness. Um, I tend with something like that, I'll do the quarters, but then I'll fold it top to bottom again and kind of squish it into a ball.
I gotcha. I gotcha. I gotcha.
And
That's
so
stuff you learn here. That's stuff you learn.
it's a little bit more homogeneous that way.
Russ, let's go into another company. Oh, so
Yep.
Peter, hold on. Peter Stokkeby is from Denmark, you said. Is that right? He's a
Yes.
Dane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And that comes out of the same factory as Orlick, Golden Sliced, and Escudo. STG owns the factory.
Okay. Now, this other blend, Newminster.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they seem to have a comparable type of tobaccos. Am I wrong?
Intentionally.
I see. You see, Russ. You see what you're dealing with here. Huh?
There was a U.S. distributor that wanted something to compete against Peter Stokkeby. Because I won't go into the background because it could put some people in a bad light. But they wanted something to compete against Peter Stokkeby because Peter Stokkeby used to be its own company. And then about 30 years ago, he sold the rights to his name to STG, and they made the tobacco for them because he had his own factory and STG had a factory, and it just made more sense to move all the manufacturing over to them. Because why have two factories going when you could have one factory working at full capacity? So that was the agreement. But for the first 20 years, Peter still had the ownership of the tobacco line.
Okay.
And then after that, the ownership would revert to STG. And when the agreement ran its course and STG took it over, this distributor wanted to have a bunch of tobaccos comparable to Stokkeby. So they went to McBaron and they worked with McBaron to create the Newminster line. And so that line is intentionally replications of a lot of the Peter Stokkeby tobaccos.
Well, what did they say? They say uh, imitation is the best form of flattery, man.
Yeah, and in a lot of the aromatics, they did a pretty good job. However, they weren't all that accurate, in my opinion, in the luxury tobaccos.
Okay, because that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the the superior navy flake. What's in there when we say that now?
Virginia,
No perique.
no Perique.
Any topping on that other than
Yeah,
rum?
a very light rum.
That's it. That's all.
That's it.
And their Virginia. Do you know where they get their Virginia?
They McBaron sources Virginias from all over the world. There's probably some African Virginia in there. There's probably some from the U.S. and probably some from South America.
Okay. Um, it's funny because I in my opinion, the way I would like to smoke these tobaccos, these name brands, I would go Stokkeby first, and then I would hit Newminster. And I'm not taking anything away from Newminster because it does have its cachet, you know.
Mhm.
Excuse me. And would you say this is a good beginner, Virginia?
If there is such a thing as a good beginner Virginia, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I definitely think somebody's got to spend a couple of years smoking a pipe and fairly sure that they're going to stick with it, and they should have their technique and their cadence refined a bit before jumping into Virginias.
Okay. So, like my son-in-law is getting into pipe smoking, and his thing is burleys, right? He wants to smoke burleys.
Smart.
Okay, so I should not introduce him to a Virginia now at all.
Actually, what you could do is have him take one of his favorite burley blends and mix a little Virginia into it to get the idea of what the Virginias bring to the table.
Okay, that's a good thing.
Burleys are high in oil and low in sugar, which means their combustion temperature, A, is lower, and B, because of the higher oil content, they produce more smoke. One of the biggest issues for beginners when they pick up a pipe is they're looking for big, thick clouds of smoke.
Yeah, and you're not going to get that from Virginia.
No, if you have somebody start out with a Virginia, what they're going to do is puff harder and puff faster, trying to create those big plumes of smoke, and in the process, they're setting the sugar on fire, and they're going to fry their mouth.
Yeah.
So I find that Burleys or Latakia blends are really the best choices for beginners because it delivers what they expect from a pipe. And it allows them to get their technique down and to learn how to slow the process down before they jump into something that burns faster or hotter like Virginias.
And this is a question that's dawned on me when I'm looking for a smoke, depending my mood and depending the time of day. If I don't know, I just let's say we had some friends over. It was a big supper. Okay, good night, get lost type thing. And I want to relax, man, and I'm tired. I tend to go for a burley. Is there a reason for that, or is that just me personally going for a burley? Because I just want to chill. I want to,
After dinner, after a big meal, or later in the evening, just before bedtime, my favorite kind of blend would be darker burley mixed with perique and a certain amount of gunpowder. I want my after dinner or late night smoke to be a powerhouse. I want something with balls.
You're talking about nicotine now. You're talking about nicotine.
I want nicotine because first off, nicotine is kind of a digestion aid. It's definitely kind of soothing after a big meal. It's also good later at night because after you get the initial kick from the nicotine, you get a drop off, and that helps calm you down and get you ready for a good night's sleep.
Dr. Russ, man. Dr. Russ.
So that's that, so I will often have a bowl of War Horse.
Which one?
Either one. I mean, the blend is the same. The only difference is the top dressing.
Okay. Okay. Do you have a preference into the War Horse?
I like the original War Horse bar, but I do like the green.
I like the green, as a matter of fact. I just got them both now, so I find, and am I wrong? It is less topped, the red, than the green.
Yeah, the topping in the green is a bit heavier. Yeah.
You see, look who you're dealing with. Look who you think you're dealing with a novice here? Give me a break. Okay, and last but not least, obviously, therefore. Oh, by the way, this is manufactured by Villager.
Yeah, it's not Villager. Not anymore.
Okay. Can we say who it's by?
It's made by McMahon.
Ah, there you go.
And it's distributed by Sutliff.
Okay. So now the 403, the superior round slices, Russ.
Yep.
What do we got in here?
Virginia and dark-fired Kentucky.
Ah, and I read there's some burley in there. That's your dark-fired Kentucky.
Well, yeah, dark-fired Kentucky is an offshoot of Burley.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Dark-fired Kentucky, yeah.
It's somewhat similar, even in appearance, to another tobacco that McBaron makes, Three Nuns.
Ah, yeah, that's it. That's where I've seen that before.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
It's similar too. I don't think it has the top dressing that Three Nuns has.
Okay, I actually I enjoy both of these tobaccos, but I've got to be in a certain mood because they are. It's got a lot of high notes, Russ. Am I right here?
Well, it's got a good amount of bright Virginia in it for sure. And it's got a decent nicotine kick because of the dark-fired Kentucky. It's got a smokiness to it. It doesn't burn as hot as the Navy Flake does.
Right.
You know, I mean, this would be a good after-dinner tobacco because of the dark-fired.
I'm appreciating dark-fired Kentucky more and more. You know that I'm liking that smoky. Can I burnt book? No, I enjoy that.
It's,
I don't know.
It's not as in your face as Latakia.
Right.
Latakia uses coniferous woods. So it uses like pine and juniper and yew, which are, you know, obviously the sap in those trees is extremely aromatic. And so when the smoke saturates the tobacco, it has a very distinct campfire-like aroma. Dark-fired Kentucky uses hardwoods. And if it's...
Like what? Mesquite, apple?
In the U.S., hickory a lot.
Hickory, okay.
In fact, when you smell a good American processed dark-fired, you can definitely smell the hickory in it.
That's it, Russ. That's the flavor I had in my mouth. The hickory.
Yeah.
I enjoy that very much. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you like ham, you're gonna like hickory.
Who doesn't like ham?
Yeah. And
well, yeah.
Well, vegans. The only thing is that there's dark-fired Kentucky that comes out of Africa. And it's the same tobacco grown in a different place, but also they don't have the same hardwoods over there that we have in the U.S. So they tend to use different hardwoods. So I find African dark-fired to have more of a floral character.
Okay.
So that's why when a lot of the European dark-fired blends definitely don't have that distinct hickory note.
Right. Sam Gawith doesn't have the distinct hickory taste.
Exactly.
Yeah. Russ, come on, man. I'm at your level. I'm telling you. Russ, come on. Come on. You know, how tall are you, by the way, being at my level? How tall are you?
Depends on which driver's license you're looking at. I'm 5'5".
You're 5'5". Hey man, I'm well, I say I'm 5'4", but my wife says I'm 5'3", and my friends say I'm 2'2". But anyways. Hey Russ, I'm gonna cut it. Thank you very much. It's always fun. It's always great. I always enjoy doing these things when we can get together. And what can I say, man? You're a mensch. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Hey, I do appreciate that. My closest friend as an adult was a lawyer from in New York City. He was actually in the DA's department in New York City. He grew up in the Bronx, Jewish. And when we met and everything, we talked for a while. We had some really nice conversations as we were becoming friends. And he said, not that it means anything, but are you Jewish? I
He
said, no.
asks you.
Yeah.
He asks you. Yeah.
And I said, no, I'm not. Why? He said, because I hear you dropping Yiddish into your conversations. I said, it's just because I've had so many Jewish friends in my life that I picked it up from them
It's part of the
along the
lingo
way.
now. Yeah.
So so when you said Mensch, the first thing I thought of was my
It was
buddy
that guy.
Bob. Yeah,
Yeah.
he went from the DA's department in New York City to the U.S. Organized Drug Enforcement Task Force in Florida.
God.
He had to carry, no matter where he was.
That's not a safe job.
No. He was always armed on the job. And then
It's too bad you didn't hang around with a lot of Italians. You'd be grabbing your crotch all the time. But anyways, thanks, Russ.
no problem.